Hi everyone, if someone had come to me just 5 years ago and said to me, you know Ian, there will come a time when tens of thousands of people will sit down and watch people play a tabletop role-playing game every week over the internet. I'd have thought they were crazy. The reason I'd have thought they were crazy is I come from a generation of gamers who never thought sitting around playing a tabletop role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons was something you describe to other people. There was even a stereotype amongst gamers of the guy, and of course it was pretty much always a guy, who would endlessly trap you in conversations about their characters and what happened at their gaming table. It was sort of weirdly ironic that a socially reclusive class of people engaged in a hobby that was social storytelling in small groups placed a stigma on people telling others about their games. The idea that you could one day be part of a cool crowd and be mass broadcasting your game sessions would have just blown our minds. I didn't actually start my streaming journey with Critical Role. The show I discovered first was one called Titan's Grave. I no longer have any idea how I learned of its existence. I'm not even fully sure why I started watching it. I did though, it piqued my interest. I had to sort of search around the promotional material to figure out exactly what the idea was, because it was a bit alien. It was like, wait there, let me get this straight. These people have filmed themselves playing a tabletop role-playing game? Yeah, it took my mind a bit of time to figure out why that would be interesting. I guess I was lucky in that production was very short. It was about 4 to 6 episodes long. I suspect if it was Critical Role length, it might not have survived, so it was a good introduction. And I was also lucky that Laura Bailey was on Titan's Grave. Laura Bailey led me to Critical Role, because let's face it, you would let Laura Bailey lead you almost anywhere. There is no doubt that I became obsessed with Critical Role because of where I was at the time in my life. I know that's true because while I still watch it every week, I'm less obsessed with it now, and sometimes I go a few weeks without watching it and I have to catch up, and then sometimes I'm sort of watching it subconsciously while doing other things just to keep current. There is also no other way of describing the fact that I was watching weeks of backlogged episodes, each over 4 hours long, in a binge. I was effectively binging it, and that is nothing but obsessive. What I was doing was letting a group of people into my life who were doing something that I also enjoyed doing, and it helped. They were telling a very good story at the same time. I literally watched hours upon hours of Critical Role as I caught up with the episodes, episode after episode. I essentially binge watched it. Then when I was caught up, there was even times when the story got really dramatic and reached critical points that I'd actually get up at 3 AM in the morning on Fridays and watch it live. There's no other way to describe watching Critical Role live at 3 o'clock in the morning as a bit crazy. But let's face it, I was living alone, processing a traumatic event. There was times I didn't bother going to bed and just slept on the sofa. So getting up to watch Critical Role and people playing a tabletop role-playing game at 3 AM, while I'm sure it's still crazy to some, it wasn't crazy in the scheme of things at the time. There are moments in the first campaign of Critical Role that stick with me as much as any TV show. In fact, more so I'd say. It's certainly the case that I've been emotionally caught up in the events more so than I have most TV shows I've watched. Since it's raw, live, unexpected and unscripted, but since those playing are voice actors, the events are intensely dramatic when they kick in, it's incredibly engaging. Like the mad obsession with journeying across the Milky Way in Elite Dangerous, Critical Role became the second obsession. As I let those intensely charismatic people goofing around playing Dungeons and Dragons into my life, again providing a way to engage with something while keeping my rather introverted way of dealing with it entirely intact. I wasn't alone really in finding Critical Role at just the right time. The community is replete with stories of people becoming enthralled with the show during traumatic times in their lives, and the various ways it, or the community around it, has helped them through it. So while the reasons and the circumstances are unique to each person, the fact it helped me at such a time isn't strange at all. I do suspect I've reached peak Critical Role, the peak point being my journey to Gen Con to watch a live show. I still can't get over that. Travelling to the US to watch people play Dungeons and Dragons in a live show as if it's a rock concert. Yeah, it is really weird. Great, but weird. It was ludicrously expensive due to travelling at peak times, and there's no way to describe the experience as anything but slightly crazy. It did feel like some sort of capstone to my Critical Role experience though. To this day, I've not watched any other streamed show. This may change at some point, but there is a small part of me that thinks watching people play tabletop role-playing games is still pretty strange, and by and large, a format that isn't really that interesting. And actually what I'm a fan of is the unique alchemical brew that comes together on Critical Role. It's great that streaming Dungeons and Dragons has resulted in a whole new popularity for the game, and one hopes tabletop role-playing games in general. I mean, it is ridiculously popular now. It's entered the phase where major newspapers announce it as cool, while some of us, of course, have secretly always held that belief. Yeah, it's weird that there is a whole crowd of people with delusions of being cast members rather than just getting round a table and paying, and people running games self-describing themselves in an almost delusional Kevin Feige-like proportions. But overall, it is a fascinating thing. And it's true to say that I'm running a role-playing game currently because of Critical Role. The simple truth is the show reminded me how much a part of my life tabletop role-playing games are. My life is just a whole lot less interesting without them in it. It's also true Critical Role set me off on a personal challenge to create something better than Critical Role for me. Until the next chapter, you can support me by doing a few simple things. Like the video, subscribe and hit the bell icon, certainly post a comment, and let's continue to make small great changes to make life a story worth telling.